Hello and welcome to Dive In With Me, the podcast produced, researched, and recorded by the Fondation EME. In this podcast, we try to shine a light on the importance and the power of music on people. In this episode, we are talking to Bradley Travis. Bradley Travis was born in Cheshire and studied at the Royal Northern College of Music and the Royal College of Music International Opera School. His most important opera roles include Figaro in Le Nozze di Figaro and Mazzetto in Don Giovanni. Bradley also performed in Vaughan Williams' Serenade to Music at the 2016 Last Night of the Proms at the Royal Albert Hall. He is also the associate artist at English Touring Opera, commissioning, directing, and writing new operas for children, devising and leading workshops, and curating their learning and participation output. In this episode, we dive into the subject of operas for sound audiences, why we should continue producing and composing special operas, what makes them so special, and we also talk about the image of opera singers and musicians. Also, you will hear me confuse Mozart's Little Night Music with Queen of the Night for whatever reason. So, have fun! Hi Bradley, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm fine, I'm fine. It's sunny in Luxembourg, so that's really good. And I see it's sunny with you as well.
It's really sunny and it's really warm, actually. So it's very nice. Quite unusual.
Yeah,
Actually, last week or so, it's been quite warm in London. So yeah, it's been nice.
yeah, here as well. And it was like summer before summer because I think today or tomorrow is summer solstice, no?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I think today maybe is the longest day.
yeah.
Even last night, it was very, very light late on, and we were like, oh yeah, it's tomorrow. So yeah.
So to start this podcast, we ask everyone what's their favorite music. So what's your favorite music?
So I'm going to really sit on the fence and give you like a very on-brand answer, being from an opera company, and then also sort of more popular music answer. So, my favorite opera and probably my favorite composer. So the favorite opera is Le Nozze di Figaro, and favorite composer is Mozart. And I think one of the main reasons, I mean, I've always loved Mozart, but one of the main reasons is that Figaro in The Marriage of Figaro was the first like major role that I did in like both at college, so when I was learning, and then also professionally. So it's got a really like special place in my heart. And I mean, you can't beat Mozart. It's just incredible. And then my sort of less classical music answer is that I've always loved Billy Joel, and my that definitely comes from my dad. You know, big Billy Joel fan and just singer songwriter stuff. Always loved those sort of Billy Joel, Ben Folds, Elton John. You know, all those sort of artists. But yeah, Billy Joel, I would listen to when I'm just relaxing.
Nice, good choice. I like your style. So you've already talked about opera now a little bit, and that's also how we came to know each other. You working at English Touring Opera, so maybe you can explain what English Touring Opera is doing and also what's your role within it.
Sure. So English Touring Opera is a national touring organization in the UK, and we take opera all around the country. So we go to as far south, for those listeners who know, we go as far south as Cornwall in England, and then we have in the past been up to Scotland, to Perth in Scotland, and lots of places in between. So we're kind of what you call a mid-scale touring company, that we go to a lot of mid-scale theatres, which are around 600 to 1,000 seats. And so we take operas like The Marriage of Figaro, like Tosca, like whatever, to bigger theatres. But then alongside that, we have quite an extensive learning program. So for young people and for adults, and we go around schools all around the country. So, for example, in the tour that we just did, that just finished at the end of May, we had an opera for 7 to 11-year-olds, which went into schools. That was called The Wish Gatherer. And then I think we had about 36 performances around the country. And then we also had an opera for people with special needs called Zoo, which we'll come on to later. But Zoo, which had, I think it was around 25 performances around the country. So we engaged with around, nearly 7,000 young people across those two shows. And my role for the company is that I'm now the head of learning and participation. So I'm responsible for those sort of school tours and all of the workshops that go alongside that. And my background actually is that I came to the company singing roles. I mean, like Figaro, I was in Mazzetto and Don Giovanni and all sorts of other roles, but I was doing the young people's work at the same time, and really, really loved it, and sort of thought, wow, this is where the most important work is going on. So yeah, and then I ended up when my predecessor Tim Yealand, who has come to Luxembourg a few times, when he left, I came into this role.
Nice. And I didn't know, so I read about the Wish Gatherer, but I didn't really quite know that it was like for schools. So is that an original piece that was written especially for school audiences?
Yeah. So that was written for school audiences, in the same way that Zoo is, but for different school audiences. So yeah, so it's that one is the first in our kind of environmental climate change trilogy that we're doing. So the Wish Gatherer really focused on nature and on protecting the planet. And I mean, the real central theme of it was planting seeds, actually, and that it was all about embracing nature. And that there was an evil character called the Muddier, which was sort of like an embodiment of urbanization and global warming. And then it was kind of a magical tale with some beautiful music. And in those shows that we take into schools, all of the young people learn songs in advance. So then when we come into the school, they're like a huge opera chorus. So we'll have like 200 kids singing with us, which is great.
Nice. I have a really bad pun about planting seeds. So you're planting seeds through music.
Exactly. Planting seeds through music. That should be our slogan. That should be what it is.
I want credit for it. And so maybe why didn't you, or like, as you said, you have like this school program, and then you have like the Send Audiences program as well. So what's the difference between the two, and what can we understand from Send Audiences? Because in Luxembourg, we don't use that terminology. What are Send Audiences?
Sure. SEND in the UK stands for Special Educational Needs and Disabilities, and then we often sort of shorten it to SEND. And what we try and do with the shows that we make is that we make them super specific to the audiences that we're kind of visiting. So that's why the Wish Gatherer was very specific to that age group, that 7 to 11 age group, and had lots of our kind of national curriculum links so that teachers in the schools can draw their teaching directly into bringing that opera into the schools. And then Send Audiences are audiences with a wide range of disabilities. So you might have some young people who are on the autistic spectrum disorder, or you'll have young people with Down syndrome, or there'll be much more sort of profound and multiple learning disabilities. And it really is a huge range. And when we go into special schools, as we have in the UK, which are specialized for kind of having those young people learn with them and dealing with their needs, their very particular needs, we go into those schools and there's a massive range of abilities. And that's where the shows that we make for those audiences have to be super flexible and have to kind of, I guess, tick a lot of boxes and make it accessible for lots and lots of different needs. So that's kind of what we term Send Audiences.
And so, like, you base the whole production and conceptualizing of that opera around those needs. So really, you
Exactly. Yeah.
take everything in account. So I can imagine that when you started creating those, I know that it wasn't with, I think it was Tim, no, that
Yeah, it's
started
Tim. Yeah.
doing them. Um, so do you know how he came to do it? How, like,
Yeah, I think that he kind of saw a gap in the market, and I feel like in a way the gap is, well, it's not there because we're in it, but I mean it's still there in a way that you don't see many organizations doing such specifically this kind of work.
mhm,
And I think Tim had worked doing workshops in special schools. And, I said earlier that I was like, wow, this is where the real important work is going on. And it was in one of those sort of workshops that I was like, wow, we were working with a group of young people, like 15, 16-year-olds who were in a special school in South London. And we were actually making This Is My Bed. I know we'll come on to like workshopping these operas, but we were making the opera This Is My Bed that came to Luxembourg a few years ago. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And I think what Tim saw years back when he was doing these workshops was that there was a real opportunity to make shows which were specific to these young people's needs, which would not only enhance their enjoyment of the operas and of music, they would actually have benefits to their mental health. They would potentially have benefits to sort of their motor skills. We see incredible stuff. I mean, even when I've performed in Luxembourg, you'll see in one performance that you might get this incredible moment where someone comes up and joins you on stage. I mean, sometimes you get people joining you on stage for the whole show, which is just amazing. Or you'll get like someone who has really complex needs might just look at you, make eye contact, which for them is a huge thing. And actually, even us going into schools, we don't know that it's huge until the carer tells us, do you know what? They haven't looked at someone for 2 months or something. And I think that's the power of music. And what we try and do is that we look at all these different needs and we find participatory elements of the show that we will then put in there. So every single song, when we're in the development of the show, will be like, okay, what's the participatory thing in this song? Because everyone, you can't have a moment in these shows that kind of that sags.
mhm,
You've got to keep the participation going because they're the bits that you can see really engage with the audience. So where a young autistic person might come up on stage and might be very sort of involved, maybe we'll say this is a classic one from our shows: is we need a bus driver or we need someone to come up and do that. They'll come up, they'll hold the steering wheel, they'll have the hat, and for them that's like an amazing, amazing moment. And then, in contrast to that, another participatory element that we might have might be that we just have a very soft thing that we're saying, oh, this is really soft. And then we'll go to a young person or an older person who might just be in a bed. They might have been brought
mhm,
in on a bed because their needs are such that they need to be lying down. And we'll go to them at the back of the hall and they can just very softly touch this thing, which accompanying with the music that's been specially commissioned to come in on it, that will be a moment for them. And we really, really believe in this cause and effect thing. And what I mean by that is that when someone does something, that they see an effect happening. And perhaps to those of us who don't have complex needs or don't have particular needs, we might think, well, I can see that I'm doing this and it's not directly making that happen. But in the past, and there's a similar one to this in Zoo, which you'll see, we've had we had this crazy character who had very long hair, and we went round, and all the people in the audience were able to grab the hair or like touch the hair, and what that would do is that would either make the trumpet player play or the cellist play, and that direct cause and effect because the young people think that they're directly doing that, and that
mhm.
gives them great sort of ownership and great I guess joy that they're making something happen which is beautiful and has resonance.
Yeah, I can remember that in the last one that you did here in Luxembourg was bird watching, and I
Yeah.
think your title was Extraordinary Tales. No, wasn't it? No,
And a
that's
bird
not the
watching
same thing.
was
Bird watching,
waxwings.
wax wings,
Waxwings. Yeah.
and in wax wings. slash bird watching, you also had like this scene, I think also with hair, like they had like to pull and
Oh
then
yeah, yeah,
a trumpet player played as well.
exactly, yeah,
And that was
yeah.
so much fun. They were all laughing so much. I think we could have gone on with that for like 30 minutes.
I
And
know that's the thing. Particularly those moments that you sort of think, "Wow, we could do this with every audience member," and actually it would hold. You know,
yeah,
the room would hold. And there's a moment in Zoo actually where we go into the rainforest house, and that is kind of what we call in these shows like a placeholder moment where we don't know how long it's going to take. So we just do it. That all of the cast have got different things that they're using to interact with the audience, and they go around. So someone's got a little spray bottle that's making it feel like that there's the mist in the air, like when you go into a rainforest house in a zoo. People have got different puppets. There's leaves, and then we've got an arch that has sort of dangly leaves that we take people up and bring them through. So there's beautiful sort of opportunities that they actually feel like they're there. And there's another moment in Zoo which is similar to the hair moment, which is we meet a flea. So a flea that we can't see, but we look at the flea under a microscope, and then we sort of say, "Oh, do you want to tickle the flea?" So the flea is being tickled on someone's back, and again, the trumpet player has just their mouthpiece, and so they're making just a very buzzy sound, which is like that of the flea going
mhm.
around, and then we say, "Oh, the flea is on you," and then they're like, "Ah." And I mean, it's really fun, but that's a similar sort of cause and effect moment.
No, yeah, and about the flea, there's like a German children's song that every Luxembourgish kids
Oh
know
yeah,
about the flea. I will send it to you
yes,
before coming
do.
over. Yeah, maybe you can include it because it's like a really fun song about this flea that's jumping around on a wall and nobody can see it, but it dances around and it's really fun. I will
Ah,
send it over to you.
send it. No, yeah, that's a great idea because it might be able to get one of the cast to learn it and just at that moment bring it in because then there'll be some recognition of the song. That'd be
Yeah.
amazing.
So yeah, we've talked quite a bit about Zoom now. So just to give a bit more context also on how our collaboration started. So I know that EME and ETO started working together in 2011, 2012.
Yeah,
Um, and I think the first one was Red, Blue, Green, if I remember
yeah,
well.
that's right. Yeah,
And so the idea was to bring you over to Luxembourg, to bring this opera that you have to the Philharmonie, to take over of the Philharmonie. So basically around the dates that we are showing the opera, we are the only ones still producing something because it's quite at the end of the season of the Philharmonie. And then for 3 days, we have 10 to 11 shows, which are always quite full, uh, with Sunday audiences. And they come to the Philharmonie by bus and then they take part of the show and go back home afterwards. And it's like really this fixed time in their calendars as well. So every year after the show, they ask us for the new dates for the for the next year. And so Zoo is now being produced next week, so from 27th to 29th of June, and you will be coming over. So can you talk a bit about the story of Zoo and what will happen? Because this will be aired after it, so you can give quite some spoilers.
well, in Zoo, we meet the main character, Ari, and Ari is on their first day at the zoo. And Ari's given a job to basically watch a tree frog. So it's a tree frog, which we have a beautiful puppet that we had made. So obviously, tree frogs are usually quite small, but our tree frog is about the size of two footballs put together. So it's quite a large tree frog. But that's just so everyone can see it moving around. And so Ari is charged with looking after the tree frog and taking it to its new home in the rainforest house. But unfortunately, Ari loses the tree frog. So then the whole show is about sort of trying to find the tree frog, and she meets and the zoo shuts. So then it's nighttime, and Ari then meets all different animals around the zoo, asking them, have you seen the tree frog? And what we do when we meet all these different characters is that we learn how to communicate with them. We wanted to sort of to recognize that we all communicate in different ways. And I think it's something quite beautiful working with these audiences, that they all communicate in very different ways, and showing that these characters in the show also communicate in different ways. So we'll meet an owl who we have to say to it to, so the audience and the owl will talk to each other. Then we meet a parrot who we have to talk very quickly to. We have to make very fast sounds. So then the parrot has a very fast aria. We also meet a sloth who we have to speak very slowly to, which is we've had some really beautiful moments on the tour in England, actually, with a young person came up and they're told to say "hello, sloth" as slow as they can. So they come up and they go "hello, sloth," and then this is the first time that we hear the sloth talk. And the actor who we've got coming over to be the sloth is hilarious. So it's this guy called Phil Wilcox, who is absolutely brilliant, and he turned around at this incredibly slow "hello," and they'd also got the young person's name, so they said their name, and they just turned to the audience and were like, "I made the sloth talk." It was just the most amazing moment. But that's one of those beautiful things. So the sloth's got a really great sort of jazzy song. Then we meet the warthog, and the warthog is very confident, but the warthog has the flea on them. So it's warthog and flea are a little duo. And then finally, we meet the very sage character of the purple turtle. So the purple turtle encourages Ari just to lay back and just daydream a little, and then maybe she'll find the tree frog. And then, lo and behold, after Ari's had a little daydream, tree frog turns up. Where else would tree frog be but at the top of a tree? So it's a really hilarious, quite silly story, but the songs are really excellent. And I think it's got a very, very clear narrative, which I think in these shows is really important because, sometimes the stories have been more complex or more weird, but this one, I think, because it's very clear that, yeah, they've been sometimes very weird, but it's very clear that we are trying to find the tree frog. We meet characters along the way, then we find the tree frog, and everything's good. And I think that sort of clarity we found on the tour, that the audiences really appreciate that. Because another thing with these shows is that they can very easily get quite hectic. And that's because often the young people are very excited, want to get very involved. But it's kind of working against that excitement, but keeping everything calm. So that's sort of the thing that goes on. I mean, there are moments of excitement, but then if you can bring it back to calm, then that's a good thing. So that's Zoo, and I think it's going to be a lovely success.
Nice. I'm so much looking forward to it. I'm really, when you come here, I just want to be part of every single show because every single show is different.
Yeah.
And it's just so nice to see how the audience reacts to you. And I mean, we not only have kids in the audiences, we also have adults sometimes coming in.
Yeah.
And it's just so nice to see when everybody's really into the story and then they participate. And by the end of it, they sometimes sing with you as well. And they really interact with you. And it's just so lovely to see. And yeah, I'm really a big fan of this. And you've talked about weird stories. And one of the weirdest one that I remember is Different, but it's also my favorite one, honestly.
Yeah.
So to give a bit of background to it, so Different was, I think, in 2018.
It was.
It was that we did it, and you've created it in collaboration with Turtle Key Arts, with the Key Club.
Exactly.
And it has this like really chaotic story, and with like these two boys, wasn't it? The two boys. They were living in tents, and it wasn't very clear if they were living in the forest or not. They just lived in tents.
And they were two Polish brothers because it just happened to be that Jan Sapinski and Maciek O'Shea, who were the two that, well, Jan is properly Polish and Maciek is half Polish. And so Tim and actually Key Club took that opportunity that at points in the story, they just spoke to each other in Polish, everywhere, whether it was in England or in Luxembourg. And it was this great thing and then they met a woman in the woods, and she becomes pregnant, and then she gave birth to puppies. So you can see the sort of, but the reason that the story is amazingly bizarre is because we had this collaboration with Key Club, that are a group that Turtle Key Arts run, with young people with autism, young autistic people who are sort of 14 to 16, maybe even 18-year olds. And it's a group that runs weekly, I think. And over a few weeks, Tim went in and worked with them to basically come up with the story. So he said to them, what happens? What happens in this story? And I know from speaking to Charlotte Cunningham, who's artistic director at Turtle Key Arts, that it's still one of the projects that Key Club, talk about the most, because they're kind of like, well, at least Tim listened to us and he actually put our ideas in the story. And that's the amazing thing, that giving them kind of autonomy and ownership of the story. And then when they saw it, they were like, yeah, that was my bit. And it was the same when we did This Is My Bed, and it was with a school in Wimbledon. Like I said, that when the young people came to see the show, actually for us, me and Abigail Kelly, particularly, who was performing in it, we found it incredibly emotional, because then when a young man, Dan, came up to be the bus driver, it had been his idea to have a bus, and it had been his idea, and he was the original bus driver. And it was just kind of this amazing moment of, wow, now he's doing it in the show. And it is really cool. But it does mean that sometimes the stories are a little bizarre and weird, which I love. I mean, it gives us a total free reign and opportunity to kind of be like, yeah, well, now we're going to Pluto. Why not?
Why not?
That's
I
the
mean,
next thing to happen.
why can't a woman suddenly be pregnant and then give birth to puppies? It made
Why not?
sense. Honestly,
It
it made
makes
sense.
total
And no,
sense.
why can't there be a purple turtle?
You can be. Everyone can be a purple turtle. Don't worry. That is actually when you hear that song, it's a really great song. It's a good
And
one.
so, how do you create the songs that go with the story? Are you writing the story first and then the songs? Are you commissioning the music?
Yeah,
So,
usually that way. Yeah, so usually there'll be a certain amount of work to figure out what the story is going to be, and then whoever's writing the words will write all of the words. So that the text will be done first, and then with Zoo, then that text was sent to the composer Lucy Treacher, who is a really fantastic composer. The interesting thing about Purple Turtle is Purple Turtle actually almost was the inspiration for this project, because Purple Turtle we commissioned a while ago as a standalone song in our we did a online series of workshops during the lockdowns about different colors, which I ran online, which you can see on ETO's YouTube. And when the purple one, the song was Purple Turtle. And I was just like, oh my God, Lucy's written such a great song. This is like it's a really, really brilliant, catchy song. And then I thought, I think Lucy would be a great person to write our next opera, and we need to include Purple Turtle. So then that was the inspiration, that it had to be something where Purple Turtle would make at least a little bit of sense to include. So Purple Turtle is older than the show. It's very much in the operatic tradition, I guess, of taking stuff from a previous thing and putting it in
yeah,
in a different piece.
that's true. And also, I think what changed this year is that you were able to send us some material to send to the schools that
Yeah,
they can use beforehand. And I saw on your website that you call those social stories. Can you
exactly. Yeah.
tell us a bit more about those?
Yeah, so my colleague Maddie Barnes, who's the assistant producer for all of this stuff, she came in September actually, and she'd got this experience of doing these what we call access packs, and what a social story, which is part of the access pack, basically is sort of a short, very simple description of certain moments or certain situations or events, which is accompanied by symbols, very simple symbols. And we worked with a company called Widget, who actually make and commission these symbols. So what we created for this tour was we created a social story, which was what is opera. So it's a social story which kind of goes through and it explains what an opera is. And then the other social story that we made was what happens when the opera comes to your school, or in the case of the Philharmonie, what happens when the opera comes to the Philharmonie, which we work with you to make Luxembourgish social stories, which I know that Maddie really enjoyed. So that was really great. And what it can do is that it can relieve some of the anxiety that some of the young people might feel about new events. Because then, in the time working up to it, it's another reason why we send songs in advance often. That the teachers can be working with them and saying, in a few weeks, we're going to see this thing. This is what it is. Let's look at these symbols together, and then let's listen to the music. And then the feedback that we get is that when the young people actually come and see the show, they're much more relaxed of like, oh, I know what's going to happen, and this is the order in which it's going to happen. There's all sorts of different uses for social stories. That it could be more about routines, and what are going to school. What does it mean to be having your dinner or getting dressed, or all that sort of stuff. But it's very useful for these events that might not be so normal in their lives.
And I also feel like it should be available to everyone because honestly, not everybody's used to going to concerts or operas. Um,
Totally.
and this may also take away some of the fears that people can have going
Yeah.
into a concert hall or going into an opera. And I really enjoyed it when I saw what she did with the socials, how really like step by step she explained what would happen. Like what is an opera? And then there are singers, and singers play a role. And that role, in that role, some things can happen, but that doesn't mean that the singer's sad or angry
Yeah.
if the role is sad or angry. So that they shouldn't take it personally, for example, but also
Yeah.
in the second one, like we will go see a show. A show has lights, and then we will
Yeah.
take the bus to go to the show. And I was really, really enjoying it. And this got me thinking about how we could maybe make concert halls and opera houses more accessible also in that way that we can
Mm,
explain to people what will happen exactly and that they shouldn't fear what's happening because honestly there's nothing to fear and
totally agree.
no barrier and everybody should just enjoy themselves and also people are sometimes having routines and or don't know what would happen
Yeah.
and or yeah or can like um yeah they don't know how to handle like some situations and I was really really glad to see what you did
Mm.
and I found it really interesting and I think we can learn so much from those social stories.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, so like you said, so much of what makes people nervous about coming to concerts or things is actually the process, and the actual place itself can be quite nerve-wracking for people.
Hmm.
Yeah, we made them also for the other schools, what we'd call like the mainstream schools, because we felt that actually, like you said, it's relevant to everyone,
Hmm.
and because for them, if their teacher says the opera is coming to the school, that's might never have happened before. They just be like, well, "What do you mean? Do I have to sing? What was going on?" And I think that's the nice thing about making it much more accessible.
Yeah, and I can also like break down those images that maybe you have in mind when you think about opera. You think maybe
Yeah,
about, so I think for most people, it's just like this singer that sings, I don't know, Mozart, Kleine Nacht, Little Night Music. Is that how
Yeah.
you call it in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. uh, and then maybe they are like afraid of it because they don't really know what's gonna happen, or is it only going to be like this really loud, really
Yeah.
high music
Exactly.
all the time? So I feel like
Yeah. And
these
Queen of the
kind of
Night, you mean? Queen of the Night.
Queen of the
Yeah.
Night, Queen of the Night.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. And I think it can be quite surprising when, the people that perform for us, they're just, just normal people. They look normal, and I think that that's what we always do with the operas with for young people with special needs, particularly, is that we'll do before the show starts. We're like mingling around with puppets, saying hello, saying what our name is, and often using Makaton sign language. And that sort of breaks down those boundaries and sort of another way of making things more, I think, accessible and inclusive.
And could you also imagine like taking one pre-existing opera and just
Mm.
doing those for sent audiences? Or why wouldn't that work? Or why would it work or wouldn't it work that well, maybe?
I think it's possible. I really think it's possible, but I think it would need, like any opera, would need massively rewriting to make it accessible. I mean, probably what I do if I looked at that is I do a similar thing to what I said we do with our shows anyway, is that I'd look at every number and I'd think, what can be the participation in that? And you sort of, because even Red, Blue, Green actually had pre-existing music, but it was curated from different things. So I think there was some Handel, there was some, it wasn't a newly commissioned piece, but they were specially chosen things. I think there's probably a place for it. I think we really believe in making things new for these audiences. But there's also, I think there's an argument to say that if you do make a specially curated piece, which exposes those young people to the great high art that we have, but also with the participation, I think that could work. But I don't think that it would be wise to just perform an opera as it already is to these audiences, because I think you're not kind of recognizing their needs and the fact that number one, it's probably too long. It's probably the themes might not be themes that they can relate to, but the music's great, so why not change it up a little bit and add that participation and make it a little bit different? I think that could work.
Hmm. Yeah, and as you said, like some operas are so long, like
Yeah, they're pretty long.
uh, they're really, really long. Like Mozart was fine; he did like 3 hours max, I think. But like
Yeah,
there are others that take like 6, 7 hours to
yeah.
go through,
There's some
and that like
Wagner
kind
that
of
takes a long time,
yeah.
which we don't do any Wagner. It's too long.
I
Great music, but very
Great
long.
music, yeah. And also, like as you said, the stories are really accessible, and sometimes they are like not quite understandable, or you really need to be into that subject and have like made some research before going into it. So it takes some kind of effort. But I also feel like in doing your operas, maybe that's a stepstone into okay, maybe next time we are going to see the first part of a Mozart
Yeah.
opera,
Well,
maybe.
the Magic Flute is one that
Yeah.
it is has probably been done the most for children because I mean that's a weird story as well. That's a fantastical kind of weird story with beautiful music and very easily adaptable for young people. So I think that's good. Also, opera like Hansel and Gretel, it's already a sort of children's fairy tale. But it's one of our main sort of goals is that we make opera not scary by
Mhm.
making the operas specifically for them. So that's what we hope to do.
Yeah, I feel like you're achieving that. And honestly, I really like the operas that you do. I'm a big fan fan of them. I'm still, yeah, talking about them like years after and singing the
Yeah.
songs, like the balloon song from This is my
The
bad
balloon
one.
song, yeah. They really stay with you. I mean, I'm telling you, Purple Turtle is going to be your new song to put on
Is
when you're
Purple
just at
Turtle my
home.
new balloon song?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna get you.
And also, I mean, you're like a really big part of what the foundation is because you've been around since nearly the beginning. We were created in 2009 and then
Yeah.
started doing the shows in 2011. So, like, for the past 15 years that we've existed, you've existed alongside with us and always created the highlights, one of the highlights of the season. And I mean, thinking about the 10 years that we celebrated in 2019, you
Yeah.
would like the face of it because we had like your picture with the balloon
With the balloons.
like everywhere for promo because it was such a nice picture with the three balloons and it just
Yeah, it was pretty.
said everything that we wanted to say in one picture. So I am really happy that we are still continuing working together and
Me
that you're
too.
coming to Luxembourg next week. And we've quite run out of time, so I think we need to wrap it up a bit. Um,
Sure.
but do you have any recommendation for the listeners, like a song or a book or film, anything?
Sure. Well, again, I'm going to sort of split my recommendation. So, if people haven't heard of the historian Tom Holland, he's got a really fantastic trilogy of books about the fall of the Roman Empire. So there's the first one was Rubicon, and then the second one was Dynasty, and then the third one, Pax, which is not out yet, but it's going to come out, I think, next month. So I think they're really good. And then, I mean, like everyone, I think I've been watching the two series that have just finished that I absolutely loved. Which, if people haven't watched, they really should. Are Ted Lasso and Succession, which were both, I mean, big favorites for us.
Yes. I started Succession when I was traveling, and I still have to continue it. So
You
I,
need to do it. I mean, it's quite particular as a show, but it's very good. It's very good.
okay, nice. So thank you so much for this. I really had fun talking to you
Me
this
too.
morning,
Thanks, Sarah.
and I'm really sad that you are not coming
No, I'm
to
not
Luxembourg
coming.
next week. But I'm really happy to see the show, and also I know that you have like this YouTube. You've talked about it, this YouTube channel from ETO with all the material that you did during COVID for kids and for signed audiences. So please go look into that. We will add the
Check it
link
out.
also to the podcast, and then yeah, I'm hoping to see you around next year.
Yeah, hopefully.
So thank you, Bradley.
Thanks, Sarah. Good to chat to you.
Thank you for listening. Dive In With Me is a podcast by Fondation. For more information on our activities, go to fondation-eme.lu. A new episode will be released the first Friday of every month. See you soon.